So what's the crack? So over the next couple of weeks I'm going to break down a few haircuts that I think are the most important when it comes to men's hair. It's going to cover the 3 core shapes when it comes to men's hair, which are round, square and triangular. So in this one I'm going to be doing a square layer, a very basic haircut. But I think if you can wrap your head around these 3 core shapes, you can take that onto nearly any haircut that you would do standing behind the chair. When I understood these 3 haircuts, it completely changed the way I cut hair. So I think it's very important to understand these and take a bit of time to actually practice them, and you'll notice the quality of your haircuts just go way up. So one of the main reasons that we want to create a square shape in somebody's hair is to add a bit of strength through the corners where the head actually rounds off. So a square shape's one that's probably the most popular when it comes to men's hair, whereas a round shape follows the head shape and has a softer look. So I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'm just going to get stuck on it and show you my method of how I would do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just wet down the hair. If somebody comes under a chair, the first thing that we need to be thinking about is all the external factors, anything that might make it a bit more difficult for us, which could be growth patterns, it could be the actual thickness or density of the hair, and just anything that might make it a bit harder for us to actually get the desired outcome. After I wet it down, we're just going to section it into the front and the back, and then we're going to section off the side panels as well too. So it's going to be a very, very basic box section in the top. Right, so now that we have the head wet down, I'm going to take my first section directly through the top of the head, and what I'm going to use as a reference here is the eyebrows. More important, the middle of the eyebrows. So once I find the middle of the eyebrows, I'm just going to use the comb to come straight back, and that'll divide the head from left to right. Just comb all the hair nice and smooth away from where you've parted it, and the same on the other side. And the next thing that we want to do, we want to divide the front from the back. So we're going to take a radial section, which is going to be from the top of the head. We've got our apex, which is the top part of the head, but I want to take it where the head starts to round off, just below that. So using my comb, I'm going to find the second rounding of the head, and I'm going to use that and section it right down to behind the ear. Combing everything down nicely before we take our section, and we'll take it from there. Again, comb everything forward out of the way. So we've got the back separated from the front. Next thing I want to do, I want to divide or section the sides a bit cleaner and separate that from the top. So then we're going to have 4 panels. So to do this, I'm going to start from where the head rounds off, and how I find where the head rounds off again, we're going to use our comb, lay it flat on the head, and again use your comb to pivot. Once you find where it is nice and flat and secure against the head, that's going to be our rounding. So from there, we're going to use this to take our section from the rounding of the head to the recession. And now we've got a side panel and the top panel. And the same on the other side. Again, find the rounding of the head. Where the head starts to round off, then take that forward to the recession point. Keep this nice and neat around the ear. Then we're going to comb everything under the middle. So we comb everything forward onto our hands. Just make sure everything's nice and neat. We're going to comb underneath, grab the hair, twist it around, just to secure it out of the way. So once we have the top part secured, then we can start to work on the back of the head. And I'm going to put on the first guideline, which is going to be at the bottom here. So there's a lot of length here that I don't really want. And once I determine the length here, this will give me the guide for the back. We'll take a first initial section through the middle, and using the guide at the bottom, the length at the bottom, that'll determine the length through the middle section here as well. So again, just going to wet down the hair again because it's starting to dry out again. Make sure they always keep the hair nice and wet. I'm going to comb very similar to the top, just one single section down through the middle of the head. Comb everything on the right to the right, and everything on the left to the left. Now you can have this nice and fancy and clipped out of the way, but if I'm cutting hair day to day, I usually don't use too many clips, to be honest. I'm going to use two diagonal sections here to separate the very bottom of this, and that'll make it a lot cleaner just to make our first guideline. I'm just going to take this actually slightly lower. Yeah, so this is going to be our first cut. We're going to be creating a nice square shape through the back of it. So think of your comb, just going to pull directly down. I'm going to take a few inches off this here and take it up slightly, just with the feather razor. This will just leave a nice shattered effect at the very bottom. And making sure that we're going to keep this nice and square, using our comb to keep us right. The one thing that we need to make sure is the roots of the hair are coming directly down. They're not over directing left or right, directly down. And when it comes to the corner, we sometimes have a tendency to kind of follow the heads around. Make sure we keep it nice and square, nice and straight. So obviously the lengths in the corners are going to be longer than the length in the middle, so just keep that in mind. Now that we have our first guideline, I'm just going to do that same first diagonal section, only slightly higher, taking it about an inch up, and we're going to take whatever else needs to come off here using that first guideline. So pulling the hair down the seam, and again trying to think of that square shape, just keeping it nice and boxy, having the corners the longest pieces. So here in the corner we've got a bit more to come off than in the middle, which is alright, and it'll be the same on this side as well too. So yeah, and the full way through we're just picking up parts and making sure it's nice and even the full way through. So next section we're just going to pull everything down because there might not be too much to come off now. So pulling everything down, and nah, there's not much to come off, so just double checking, pulling everything down again, keeping our comb nice and square. And perfect. Now we've got the guide from the bottom here, and that's going to determine the length through the back. So I'm going to turn it back around here now, and I'll straighten his head up again. Make sure your client's head's always straight, because the last thing you want to be doing is cutting nice layers onto somebody's head, and then at the end of the haircut, when they put their head up nice and straight, it's actually the wrong shape that you created. So to start off on the back, we're going to take that first initial section through the middle, and I want that to be roughly about a comb's width. So we'll do that now, starting off with the left side of it, just sectioning everything out of the way, keeping it nice and clean, and then with the right, and again keeping this out of the way. Now you could keep this nice and clean if you wanted. You could pin this out of the way and keep it nice and clean, but this is the way I work usually. Nothing's ever too perfect, and I find it just quicker and easier for me. Now we're going to pick up the hair, and here's our guide from the very bottom. So here's the shorter lengths, and here's the lengths that we need to actually layer on. Right, so using our guide at the bottom, we're now going to layer this at the back. And I'm just going to pick up the hair. And one thing I want you to understand is because we're creating a square shape, I want you to imagine the box that we're pulling our hair to. So everything's coming directly to this line. And the same on the top as well too. So everything's like a cube, and what we need to do is we need to pull the hair to that box without over directing it left to right or using too much elevation up and down. We want the hair to come out 90 degrees from the head, and we want to pull it directly to that box and cut it nicely before moving on to the next sections. So I'm going to pick up the hair here and find our guide at the bottom. So there I have my guide at the bottom, and we're just going to work our way up the line, making sure our comb is dictating the shape of the haircut. And the next thing that we need to make sure is that our body is nice and straight. If we're bent over, then chances are we're going to be creating the wrong shape. So next, just keep working our way up the line using our guide from below, and try to retract the scissors when we're cutting, just to ensure that we get a nice clean shape. Comb in, making sure that the roots behind are nice and tight and we've got good tension. Just working our full way up here. When it comes to the round of the head at the top here, just set your shape before you come out. Put your fingers in behind and pull everything out. You have to go again because see some of these hairs are not the way I would like them to sit. Pull everything out and cut. So now we've layered that first section and everything should be nice and square. The next thing that we need to do, I usually work on the left hand side of the head first, so over here, and then I would work onto the right hand side of the head. But essentially we're just going to remember where our first guide was in the middle, and we're going to half that. So we're going to divide it again and make a new section. So this is section number 2, and essentially we're going to be using the guide from the first half that we've cut, and again I'm going to be pushing the second section into section 1, but not over directing it completely, just thinking about moving it slightly. If I over direct too much, then it'll cause the new hairs that I'm cutting to be slightly longer than these, and it'll give me something of like a concave layer, which we don't want. What I'm going to do now is pick up the hair again, and we're going to try to find our guide. So again, making sure we're coming out directly from the head, directly to create that square shape. So double checking, there's my guide, and we're going to work our way up the section the way we did with the last one. So again, the most important thing is we're not over directing left to right too much. I think the one thing that we need to understand is remember about that box shape and pull everything to that box, no matter where we're at on the rounding of the head as well too. Establish our shape with our comb first, and then pull out to the box and cut that nice straight line. That'll keep us right the full way through. So again, working our way up here, just double checking the guide the full way. The bottom of this as well too, because right, so now that we've done that, I'm going to again half that section, move this to the right out of the way. So now we've got half our guide again here, and then we're going to get half of the new hair and move this all out of the way so we can cut again. So moving on to our next section, this is section 3, so section 3 slightly back into 2 again, just to create or keep that square shape going. So again, coming in from underneath and coming out to find that guide. So there's our guide. Working our way up the section. The main thing that we just need to be thinking about is keeping the tension consistent throughout, keeping our shape, and letting the comb do the work. The comb's the most important tool when it comes to cutting hair. So that's section 3 done now. Now we need to find our guide again. So I want to take half the section again, move it across, and then our next bit of hair. Again, put a comb width there, just slightly more. Again, set the shape with our comb and pull directly out to that box, keeping our posture nice and straight and our body position right so we can cut the correct shape. So we're working our way up, just still finding our guide and making sure that we're coming out 90 degrees from the head. So this will be our last section now. So for this last section, I'm going to pull all this hair back and cut it again in a square shape. So I'm not going to be pulling it back and over directing onto the middle. That would again create too much of a concave layer where it's too long here and quite short in the middle. This is the part where we need to really be conscious about the shape that we're looking to create in the hair. So these corner parts around the rounding of the head are obviously going to be a wee bit longer, and that's what we want. That's what we want to actually achieve. So here we're going to go straight back, and there is our guide. So and again, this part doesn't really matter where we start off with, as long as we're pulling to that shape. There's our guide at the bottom. And again, just working our way up, and this should be the end of side 1. So if you want to cross check this now, if we divide the half that we just cut from the half that hasn't been cut, we can cross check this if we want. So how I would cross check this is just taking a section, and we're going to check out at the exact same elevation that we just cut it. So checking our guide here, and just through the corner as well too. There's a tiny imperfection in the corner, which is alright. That's why we cross check, just to see our result, and if we need to make any adjustments we can. So we're going to work our way through the second side of it now. Then when we finish this, we're going to work our way onto the side panels. So the side panels is what's next. And again, just find that guide through the middle. We want to be taking half of the guide through the middle again. Combing this to the left and taking that second guide from here. Again, same thing again on this side. We're just literally finding the guide that we've created from the very start, and we're making sure that we're coming directly out from the head. Pushing it back into the previous section slightly, but just not over directing it too much. So again, establish our shape, pulling out, finding our guide and cutting. And then do the same again. So probably be about the same amount of sections, should be the same amount of sections on each side. Pick up the hair at the bottom, comb in, and pulling out till we find our guide. So one very important thing that I actually didn't discuss on that last side, on the left hand side, we need to be pushing our sections towards the middle where we've been cutting. And as I say, it's only a very slight movement, but the more we'd be pulling away from that guide, the more chances of rounding it off would be, rounding the corner. So it's going to be the opposite when we come to this side. We're actually going to be pulling it slightly back towards us and back towards that first initial guide. Again, very slightly. We don't want to create anything that's uneven. So working our way up. So again, half the section. It's just going to be our second last section now. Picking up the hair at the bottom, comb in behind. Just grab everything nicely first and then set our comb and find our shape. Right, so the last section we're going to take here is going to be this one. So once we've done this, then we can go back and cross check all of the back panel. The next thing I want to do is just take a horizontal section, again similar to the first side, and just cross check my work at the same elevation that I just cut. So tiny bit needs to come off. And again, keeping a wee bit too much weight around that corner, but again, that's why we cross check. Going slightly below now, and that looks quite good. How I get my length for the sides is going to be determined from the length of these hairs that has to travel to the back of the head. So these hairs are going to be my guide. Because they've got a longer length to travel in proportion to the ones that are in the middle, this is going to be the right place to start. So I'm going to have to use half of this and half of the new part, which is the side of the hair. And these are going to merge a new section. And same thing, just going to be getting the comb in flat to the head, fingers in behind, and just pulling our section right out. There I can see my guide from the back. And we're going to work our full way down here. Making sure to keep that nice square shape. Very similar to the back. We're just going to be taking half of that guide again. I'm starting to move forward in the head. And again, trying to keep it about a comb's width. Once we've got that section, we're going to pick the hair up again. Keeping our comb nice and square. Pull out until we get our guide from the last. Now, finding your guide can be probably the hardest part about doing a haircut like this, but if you can't see it, probably just means that you should go back slightly, because if you're cutting without your guide, you're more than likely just going to be cutting a random shape, and it's not going to turn out the way you want it. So again, just the same technique the full way forward. I'm going to do a few more sections and that should be us. So again, find our guide. Coming to the front of the hairline, we're just going to pull this back slightly. Sometimes the hair around people's natural hairline, it's a bit weaker. So what we want to do is just slightly over direct that one back and find our guide. Again, I just want to cross check that. So I want to do another horizontal section and lifting the hair up to where we actually cut it, seam elevation, pulling that out, and it looks quite good. So once we've checked that and it looks good, then we're just going to move on to the second side. With the same story now on the other side. So we're just going to again create that first initial section that we done here to separate the back from the front. Now these hairs that are closest to that section are going to be our guide. So again, we're going to be pulling that hair out directly out from the head and creating a square shape through here. So what we want to do is we want to take half of this section, keep all the rest of it behind, and half of this new section, come this all forward. So here, this is our new section. I'm just going to flip this around and show you, because my body position would be on this side of the head when I'm cutting this side. So and again, just working forward, half in our section again. And again, think of that box. Think of that box that I was talking about earlier on. Pulling everything directly out to it. There's our guide. Now we've only got maybe 2 more sections to do here on the side. So again, half our guide, pulling it out. And again, with the last section, just slightly over directing it back to that previous one. That looks quite nice, but we just want to go through and take another horizontal section, and we're just going to cross check the work that we just done. So pulling everything out, the seam elevation, and yeah, looks quite good. Perfect. So now we've got the back done and we've got both sides done, and you can see the shape of it already. It's a lot better when it comes to the bottom. It was a bit too long to start off with. But now we're going to unbox the section on the top. So now we're going to connect the top onto the back and the sides. And the way that we're going to do that, we're going to take a profile guide again, going by the middle of the eyebrows. and comb everything to the left. And then on the right, we're going to comb everything to the right. So we're going to have that one section in the middle of the head, and it's going to run directly onto the back of the head. So now we're going to be using a very similar kind of shape to what we done before. We want this box to continue under the top of the head, so we might have a few hairs here that we need to connect onto the shape that we cut at the back. So pull this out, and there's a bit of length at the top that needs to go. So now we're taking the guide that we just cut from the top here, the bit that matches under the back. We're going to take the longest of these shortest lengths. So here, this is going to be our guide, because this is connected onto the back part nicely. This is going to be our guide for the top length then. So we've got maybe an inch or two to come off there at the top. So I'm just going to deal with a very small kind of portion to start off with. And again, making sure our comb is nice and square. Pulling directly up from the head and make our first guideline. So just want to take away half of that and then add half of that. So working our way forward now. And cutting this nicely. Now this mannequin might be a bit rounded at the front because it's been cut before, but we'll do the best of what we can. Could be a similar kind of situation. Somebody comes into the shop and they want a certain style, and they maybe have to grow out a certain bit of the hair to get that style. So we'll not worry about that. We're just imagining if that was the case, we're going to let this grow out and it's going to come and meet the rest of it to create that nice square shape. So what we're going to do then on the top is very similar to the back. What we want to do is we want to again take half of this section on top, and then we're going to work our way across both sides. So to start off with, again, I'm going to work on the left hand side of the head just because that's my personal preference. But it doesn't matter as long as you're doing it evenly. So, going to comb down the middle of the head and take half of that first section that we just cut. And then, again, about a comb's width on this side. And because the head's starting to round off here slightly, we're going to have to pull it, again, similar to the back, we're just going to pull it slightly towards our previous section, not completely over directing it, because then that would make something like this. We want to keep that nice and square. Pick up your section, use your fingers to pick it up, and we're going to use our comb to establish a shape, find our guide, and we're going to cut. So again, drop off half of the hair, pick up some new hair, and create our shape and cut to our guide. Right, so once we've got that done, the next section then, we're just going to half that guide again, comb that out of the way, and then we're going to grab another half from the side that we haven't cut. This is going to be our new section. So then bring it around again. Same thing again, we're just moving it slightly back towards the previous. And trying to find our guide, keeping our comb nice and square. Find our guide and then cut. Take half of that away. Just grabbing a nice small section each time. Something that we can manage. Yeah. So I'm going to do one more section on this side of the head. Again, we're going to take half of that section and Still have a bit to come off actually. Right, just with the last section, I'm just going to pull this hair directly up. It's not going to be a very clean section because it's under the side of the head. But again, all I'm thinking about is that square line at the top. So I'm going to be combing everything up, matching that last guide. And just whatever hairs there is to cut. Very, very minimal at the end. And we'll check our shape now before we move on to the next, just to see how we've done. So again, cross checking, we're just always going in the opposite direction. So I'm just going to pick up some of the hair and there we have it. Just double checking everything. Yeah, looks good to me. Just need to be doing the next section now, or the next half. The next side of the head, I should say. So the next side of the head, we're going to literally same thing again. We're just going to take half of that section and move on to the new part of the head that we haven't cut. So again, bringing the comb on, establishing our shape, finding our guide, and cutting. Just going to move this slightly down now. So again, need to be adjusting the height of your client so it's comfortable. That was a wee bit too high for me, to be honest. I should have picked up on that, but moving on to the next. Finding our guide, making sure everything's nice and square and our body position's nice and square. So again, it's a repetitive kind of process, but it gives you good clean results. And you're just taking half of the hair, bringing it on to the next section where you haven't cut yet, and using that as your guide. It's quite a simple technique. Finding our guide again. And we'll maybe have one or two more sections here, and that should be the top cut as well. So where it starts to round off, just make sure we're establishing our shape with our comb and still pulling directly up to that box that we wanted to create. Again, just any hairs at the side of the head, just pull them up into. Cross check it now and see where we're at. So looks good to me. And obviously it's a practice. It's not going to be perfect the first time you do it. And a square shape, I think, is probably one of the hardest shapes that we can actually do. It's hard to keep them angles through the roundings of the head, but it's a nice look, and it's one that does need practiced a good few times. So always try to come back to a mannequin head, and it'll make it a lot easier when you actually transfer this over to a client and your chair. And if we want to then cut the fringe so it matches the length on the sides, we'll just take another section run through the top of the head and just bring the hair out, and we'll see the disconnection from the top and the sides. So what we're going to do is just elevate that to 90 degrees, which is what we've been cutting that the full way through, and the seam through the very front. So you have this slight bit of overhang here, and I'm just going to connect that under the length on the sides. So this is the thing about a square shape. This is something that we could wear away from the face, or if we wanted, we could wear it in a way where it's more down to the front, but then we would have to personalise the fringe, which we can do. But for this one I'm just going to keep it very basic and simple. Maybe in a different video I'll explain how we could actually personalise the fringe and have it more of something similar to like a shag, or more of a 90s style cut. But for this one I'm just going to keep it very basic, and we're just going to style it now and see how it turned out. To style this, I'm just going to use a small bit of paste, and I know it's only a mannequin head, but it'll give us a good finish. Working from the roots to the tips. One of the annoying things about the mannequins is the hair sometimes doesn't flow nicely around the sides and doesn't tuck away normal hair would behind the ear, but we'll make it work. And then once we've got the product on, we're just going to dry it with the hairdryer. Very roughly, just add a bit of texture and volume to it. And that's it. Once we have it dried off, then that's the style that we can wear away from the face. And it's a classic kind of men's longer length hairstyle. At the back you can see that it sits quite boxy. It has that square shape to it. Let me know in the comments what you think of it. The next one that we'll cover is the round shape, and that'll be a bit more softer, taking away these corners that we've just created. But let me know what you think anyway, and hopefully it's something that can help you, get practicing and try it out in the mannequin head. Try it out a few times to get your bearings with it, but there we have it. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button, and there'll be plenty more to come. Hopefully you liked it.